Hello, everybody, and welcome back to where HSR, that's me, breaks down book reviews. And if you into this and you want to talk about some stuff, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at HSR514, even though the graphic only shows the Twitter icon. Same shit. Holla at me. We can talk and engage in some conversation after this, and you can let me know what you think. Okay, so this is a series that I put together because I'm on a mission to read 60 books this year, because some meme on the internet told me that CEOs can pull that off, and I was like, I'm gonna do that too. So that's where we're at. So I read a whole bunch. I didn't film the videos for them the way I maybe should have. I was not being so vigilant. So as you saw in the thumbnail, there are actually 4 books we're going to talk about today with my shitty picture that I took. That's how we do until, the design stuff's a little more on point. Basically, I'm going to run through each of them one by one, show you a little bit about what the book's about, how I felt about the book, the impression it had on me, and ultimately whether or not I would recommend that you should read this book for XYZ reason, or the type of person I think would care about reading this book. On that note, let us start with the very first book we're going to talk about today. It is called Chasing Daylight. I hope I'm not fucking that up there. It is brought to us by Eugene O'Kelly, who is the ex-chairman and the former CEO of KPMG, one of the biggest accounting firms in the USA. So basically, we have a dude who has managed to climb his way to the top, or one of the powerfulest positions in the world of accounting within America. So a very significant power player. He's in control. He's very used to kind of getting his way, doing his own thing. He kind of plans out his life. He's used to living 18 months in the future. He's sacrificed everything building up towards this point of retirement for him and his wife to kind of make up for all of the time that's been lost. And then he finds out that he has cancer, and that he is going to die in a few months. I think he's been given like 3 to 6 months or something along those lines. And this book kind of documents his journey from finding out about this decision until the moment where he kind of passes, and he just kind of put it together as a way to show how his priorities have shifted, and maybe had he discovered this new way of looking at life, he would have had more meaningful relationships while he was still with us. So he kind of starts off from the moment of the diagnosis and describes this quest where he wants to shift from realizing that he has control over everything, and bam, he's the man and he's making all this stuff happen. And ironically, he was instituting this like live better at home, be more family oriented policies within his company. It was very important to him to almost do some of the things he ended up doing, but he himself, in position of the power, being so busy, was unable to maybe live up to some of the things he wanted others to do. So ultimately, he proceeds to kind of let go of the control, realize he's going to die, try to figure out, how to accept this. And one of the things he tries to do is create a sense of closure. He writes out a list of all the people he knows that he wants to kind of say goodbye to, thousands or plus people that he needs to. He puts them into tiers, creating almost 5 circles, like acquaintances, people he's met a couple of times, and then kind of like, old friends or whatever, and then kind of like, work colleagues, and then, your outside friend circle, then your like immediate family, and it kind of grows closer with like his core family, his wife and his daughters and such being like the last people that he wants to say goodbye to. And he kind of describes the process of how he says goodbye to these different peoples, and he has these selfish, meaningful experiences, like kind of twisted to each person. So if this dude was a hockey card fanatic or whatever, he bought that guy a hockey card and sent him an email. Anyway, I went through all this stuff, and it's really heartbreaking and shit. And then as he's getting to the part where he's like about to say goodbye to his family and stuff, all of a sudden he stops writing, and his wife, who is Corinne O'Kelly, Corinne something, sorry if I said that wrong, she takes over and she finishes the book for him, because before he could finish his goal, like, you really get invested, right? You're watching this man in like his dying days set out to do this mission. He gets like 80% of the way through, and then it just is too late. and he can no longer continue. So she kind of finishes up the little gaps in the story, explains what happened in his final days, and showed some love and appreciation. And this book apparently made sure that the wife and his family, etc., are set for life. It was a big old bestseller back in the day. And honestly, I could not recommend this book to you enough. I got it recommended to me because, I mean, I work a lot between my job, between building out this YouTube thing. I make music. I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. And sometimes it's just really hard to stop and smell the roses, as they say. Like Mr. O'Kelly, Mr. O'Kelly kind of put that one of his biggest regrets is in like a 35-year career, he only managed to make time to have lunch with his wife like twice. And that was kind of significant to me, as I personally barely make time to like go on dates or do any of those things I'm supposed to, because I'm so focused on the grind, and like I'm starting to feel the impacts of it. So reading this kind of a book was super impactful for me, and it really makes you think about mortality, and I've had a few moments like that. So like it's a good book to read, especially if you're on the grind, because it can add some perspective. It can maybe help you stop for a minute and just value other things than you normally would, because so often you kind of get tunnel vision and you want to go when you want to go, etc. I have to say, dope ass freaking book. I really dug it. I think you should read it. I highly fucking recommend it. Anyway, that's cool. Let's move on to the second book we're going to talk about today. And this is in the order that I read them. That no particular preference. It's just how it came to be. A lot of people seem to think that my desire to read mostly nonfiction was a problem. I mean, in real life, so many people keep telling me about the value of fiction and the value of fiction. Like, my choice to read what I want somehow sparks the like, you must read whatever. Okay, fine. People are just sharing what they want, and everybody has their requests, so I would love to hear yours too. Let me know if you think fiction versus nonfiction, which has a bigger value, and let me know what books you want to read. But I caved. You know, I listen to people, so I bought Ready Player One. It just came out in movies. Y'all are probably like, ooh, movies and stuff. I'm probably not going to watch the movie. I'm a big fan of just, like, reading the books. I prefer movies. I prefer television shows and reading books over movies in general, just kind of the more long-term commitment to something. I find movies kind of short. They're beautiful. They're well-made, so well-packaged, all the great reasons you guys have for loving them. I'm just much prefer to read the book version of stuff when given the choice. It's not that I don't like movies. It's just I prefer other mediums. That's all I'm trying to say. So I read this book. It was dropped back in August 16th, 2011 from Ernest Cline. And so there's a lot of talk about references and cultural thises and that's, and I've seen many articles floating around online, and I just, whatever. I'm going to take the book at the book value. So there is tons of fun cultural references in the book, and however the movie visualizes them, I don't know, but the book paces them really fun-like. There's a lot at the beginning because it's worth contextualizing this main character, who you probably know about if you're watching this, but if you don't, I'm just going to avoid any kind of distinct spoilers of the plot line, since it's fiction, where that matters. Unlike the nonfiction books, where I can spoil it all I freaking want because it's knowledge nuggets, But like all I'm saying is, so it starts off and all sorts of context setting, and you're being brought into this beautiful world, and it kind of gave me the same imagination, joyful clusterfuck experience that I got from like stuff like Harry Potter, or when I first touched the George R.R. Martin's books, these crazy universe, and it's cool. And I love the fact that it's in the future, and that it's dabbling with stuff like advanced VR and the future of video games and potential situations, and it's stuff that I almost secretly hope comes to pass the way that he describes. So for me, it was like a really awesome kind of like world to play in. And then I think the story is for the most part really great, but I think the storytelling's fine. He's not the most brilliant writer, but he's a good storyteller, and if you into that kind of geeky stuff, if you not, whatever, it's totally worth checking out this book. And there is some criticisms to be made a little bit. So some people, if you don't like pop culture references, it's probably not the book for you. They're going to be around. It's going to go through a lot of them. They're kind of woven directly into the plot. But when you're reading it in the book, and it's basically like the plot of these pop culture references mixed with all of the words of Mr. Cline, is it Cline? Yeah, Cline, and how he like just kind of like spins it into his universe, it totally makes sense, and it totally freaking works in a great way. my issue with this book is pacing. So like the first half is fucking amazing. It's a very slow pace. You're getting introduced into stuff. You're kind of learning about the world. You're getting some discoveries going on, and you're really getting the time to get to know how the characters think and feel and the impressions, and there's a little bit of a psychological exploration going on, whether or not you agree with the ethics, whether or not however you feel, I don't care. Really, at the end of the day, it's an interesting pace that he's trying to set. I mean, I care in general, but for the sake of this point. Then all of a sudden, the story starts to move along, and the main key thing starts to happen, and all of a sudden, the circumstances of our protagonist change, and it just goes so rapid pace. And I think that if you were to have taken a book like this dude and instead it had turned into like 3 versions of this book where the same plot, the same time spans of story within what happened in his book had just taken 3 books to tell with crazy detailed, like regulated, controlled pacing, it would have been really cool because it just kind of felt like you're going through, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's taking too long, oh shit, and you got to go like super quick and finish fast, and it's like the worst situation. And I'm not saying it is bad. I really still enjoyed this book. I would still recommend you buy this book. I still think you should do it. It's a fun read. It will provoke your imagination about some of the plausible things that could happen and some strange stuff. Like, it's not going to break the fucking scales for philosophy here, but it's a fun read, and it's a good throwback to like the 80s, and so in regard, and the 90s, and I enjoyed it, and so screw that. You should read it. Just be advised that the pacing's kind of weird. That was my real 2 cents on that. So there we go. Holden's review portion of this freaking thing, and I did just third person myself. So I'm going to take that as a weird segue into the next book, which is Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland. The version I have is the edition that was released September 30th, 2014, meaning it's actually kind of the newish version of this. You might be going, what the fuck is Scrum? Because it's a stupid word. No offense. It's a stupid word, though. And, like, it is essentially a process of how you get things done. So you may recall, if you cared about this series on this channel, that I covered the 4 disciplines of execution. Basically, it's how you get things done. And this is a different twist on getting things done. So it starts off kind of taking an attack on conventional planning, what they call the waterfall method. So this is where you put together your full-on project scope, your A to Z, your timeline, how things are going to get done, when things are going to get done, what resources, your key stakeholders, your like project management 101. Then what it does is it says that's a bad system because of all the unforeseens, and it does the cliche crap of citing a bunch of historical incidents and specific things that it found that it, like validate the point. So it uses the FBI as an example and how they tried to update their IT infrastructure and the fiasco that it was up until they met Scrum. And then they go through other examples throughout the book, and I always find that stuff a little bit corny, but I get it. If it's not there, how will we know that it's valid knowledge? Anyway, I'm just poking fun at the style. It is kind of what it is, but it was still a really well done book for this matter. I really found it a pleasure to read. It was super easy to get through, decent font. So for when you're kind of touching on this sort of boring subject matter, that kind of stuff is worth knowing that it's you can progress quickly. Sometimes it's worth making a really boring book or boring subject matter. I find it interesting, but cliche boring, to make it like bigger font so that at least you can turn pages faster and you feel like you're getting through it quicker. Even if it costs a little bit more to produce and I have to spend a couple more dollars, I would do that. I'm just putting it out there, book people, if you're reading this. So then we come into how the Scrum method kind of disregards conventional planning. So you obviously still have your goals. Let's say it uses the example of building products and product development and all of that. So you want to make a product that does what? And you list out all the stuff you want it to do. So to achieve that, what are you going to have to do? And then you basically take Post-it notes and write out all the things you have to do and break them down into as many specific tasks as possible. So if things aren't going to work if you want to print a book. So write the book, okay, then break that into research the topic, structure it, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Whatever example you have, whatever task you're trying to pull off, you break it out into whatever. We're going to practice this actually as we build out the Behind That Suit website. So it'll be like the task, the design work, how do we get that done, the structuring, the copywriting, all of the tasks, and you break it into specifics. So every individual thing you can, you put it on, and then you prioritize everything. And you keep in mind the 80-20 rule, where 80% of people need 20% of your shit. So if you think about it, 80% of people care about 20% of our reviews. So that means the other 80% aren't as important. So if we were going to optimize our website's priority, it's about taking those 20% that people love the most. Those are the web pages we put the biggest amount of effort into. And then that's how we start, because those are the ones that need to go live first. So using a Scrum methodology, you can isolate where to put your efforts for maximum effect. And then as you continue to do these things, you slowly build out the bigger project over time. So it's a matter of understanding where you're going, breaking it into manageable chunks, and then proceeding to working on only the wisest shit, one item at a time, so that as time goes on, you actually see development where it's relevant, and then it cuts, the total time of production to 25% because you're agile and blah, 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 and all the fluff words. And they kind of point out a lot of this is inspired by the Japanese way of doing things, where, let's say, a fun anecdote, they have like a factory or a production line, and there's a problem. So you're in a car factory, maybe I think it was Volkswagen should have learned from this, but you're in a car factory and there's a problem somewhere on the assembly line, and maybe it's going to be a faulty thing. That person has to stop the entire production of all cars. All specialists now surround that one individual person and ask questions. What the fuck happened? Da, 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 da. And they run through all possible scenarios until they isolate what was broken, resolve the issue, and only once the issue is fully resolved can production go back to normal. Taking that approach, they have some of the best cars in terms of safety standards and all that other statistical crap you can Google after. But the point is that if you kind of take that agile, focusing on solving the most important issues and dealing with things issue at a time, it allows you to go quicker and remain agile, and a lot of other buzzwords that are worth learning. And yeah, so it's a really interesting book. It's, again, Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland. I highly recommend that. I really enjoyed it. It's way better than the 4 Disciplines of Execution. It is really efficient, and I can see how you could apply the principles of that book to most things in your life that you want to get done. And so yeah, check that out. Let me know what you think in the comments. And we do have just one more book to talk about, and it's going to be the last one. Don't Make Me Think: Revisited, a common sense approach to web usability, which is the 3rd edition of the book, popped off on December 24th, 2013, written by Stephen Krug, and he's got a little face there. Honestly, this was, of this round of books, probably the most useful one for me, the funnest one for me. I mean, look, the efficiency book is good. I'll get more efficient. Whatever. Ready Player One, fun. I read some fun stuff. The meaningful philosophy book about priorities of life, that's cool. This book is about designing web pages, which is super practical to my life. I work for a software company where part of my role might have me designing some web pages in my life. Not like the design graphic part, but like the wireframing, the scoping, the deciding what goes where. So what this book does is it kind of explains how to think about website and product design in a way to minimize the amount of thinking that you, the user, has, so that you don't get frustrated. It explains user testing. It covers basic design principles. It covers the faux pas. It covers why things work. He kind of points out that in all the time since the original version of this book, all he's had to do is update the examples of the companies he uses and the specifics so that it doesn't look dated. But for all terms and purposes, the raw knowledge and information and design principles all seem to be like universal, almost constants. He also touches on the mobile experience and how this creates other such things. And he kind of points out how, almost like in a Scrum way of doing it, you can ghetto attack how you do your testing with a couple of people on the fly, get enough information to get that 80-20 kind of philosophy in place, and apply some smart design choices. And think, because often why I care about this is because design in general is a tough thing. You, when you work with the product, are very much in it, so you're caught up on knowing how things are supposed to work. It's really challenging to take a step back and pretend to be somebody who doesn't know anything, so we all end up developing these blind spots. And this is just kind of a way of learning how you're supposed to design mixed with how to test to optimize your designs. Interestingly enough, unlike the rest of the books, can you see it? Yeah. This one is a little bit more like a textbook, which is freaking cool. And on top of that, Mr. Steve Krug, as he points out, isn't like the biggest fan of writing, so he kind of keeps it short, concise, and he cracks mad jokes to make it super entertaining, puts in comic strips. He's kind of like a straight to the point motherfucker who happened to be really good at what he does, so he got peer pressured into making this book per se, or maybe he did it because he wanted whatever reason, and now he is one of those guys who can kind of do what he wants, so he kind of has a bit of a fun approach to writing it. Like, if this was required course reading material compared to the plethora of boring shit out there, this is some A-game interesting things. If you are going to build a website, if you are going to work with kind of any sort of design, I'd highly recommend this, because the edges and boundaries of like web to normal life is kind of becoming more of a blurred boundary line. So you don't really know when all of a sudden what you're doing now requires a web interface or an application. So having this kind of knowledge only is going to help you in the future as creativity is more important. And this isn't about how to be creative. It's more how to restrict your creativity to communicate what you want to do super effectively. And for that, I think it's one of the best books I've read, and you should totally recommend it. It says 4 books I read. I'd recommend all 4 of them. I guess that means we're coming up to the end of this. Before we head off, I would love to hear more about what you're reading, what you thought about any of these books if you've read them. Feel free to hit me up at Twitter at HSR514. And before we take off, I wanted to remind y'all that the Grind to 1,000 subscribers contest is still happening. As of recording this, it's at 967 subscribers. How it works is if you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment about one of these books, about me, about something, to spark a conversation, you enter into a raffle, with first prize being $100 of Amazon gift card money, plus you get to request a review of anything you want from the channel. Prize 2 will be $50 plus the review, and prize 3 is going to be $25 plus the review. Plus, for every other video that you go back and watch, that you like, that you comment on, you get extra entries into the raffle. I'm keeping track of all of them, and once we break past 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to go on YouTube Live, and I'm going to use a random number generator, pick some people, contact those people, you give me your email address, I send you the Amazon gift card, $100 USD value, whatever country you're in, we'll convert it to the right number, and boom, you get that gift because we fucking love your comments. Thank you so much for watching this. Let me know what you're reading. I have a huge list. Don't take it too personal if you make a recommendation and don't see it for a while. And HSR shirts will be available soon. Peace.